Welcome back, everybody. It's great to be back on the Left Right Center show. We've got some big things cooking up. We're gonna have some meetings here in the future, and maybe we'll have a different show in the future. But for now, we are very excited to be talking with everybody again. How's everybody doing tonight?
Pretty great.
Doing good.
So tonight's going to be a little bit less formal than we usually are. I think we're gonna chat a little bit, talk news. There wasn't anything huge in this last week. I don't know about you guys, but it's just like a slow drip of a whole bunch of small things.
I mean, since our last podcast, there were some big things. Wasn't the acquittal after we had our last podcast? That was pretty big, but we expected it, right?
Right, we expected it is the thing. Anybody who's paying attention knows that was really only going one way. Like, there was probably a little wiggle room on who voted which way, but nobody's surprised.
There's still some things you could have talked. I didn't actually pull much up on it, but I felt like that the defense attorney was really hypocritical in the part that I saw. Like his big argument was, "Oh my God, the Democrats altered video and cut out pieces specifically to get their point across." And then he's like, "Oh, by the way, here, let me show you a bunch of video clips of all of these Democrats saying things that were also inciting, or kind of related to violence." And it was like the clip of one or two lines out of every one of their speeches. He did exactly what he was complaining about. It really irked me, just because of the hypocrisy and the level of ignorance, I think, to just put those right next to each other and expect people not to see it. I guess he just figured the people that he was speaking to don't give a shit.
Or turnabout is fair play.
I'm okay with that, but at least call it out. Be like, hey, you guys did it. I'm going to do the same thing, rather than complain about it and then do it.
I think the big bombshell that came out of everything was McConnell coming out right after and be like, yeah, Trump's guilty, but technicality, we can't prosecute him in the Senate. And I was like, what? I was pretty surprised to hear McConnell say that. The direct
you think it's like a strategy thing? You think maybe he's trying to maneuver the party in such a way that it doesn't fracture or something?
Maybe.
Probably.
I think he's just outmaneuvered. I think McConnell is going to get replaced eventually with another Republican Party leader that is more populist. I think even McConnell, who has this very unpassionate climb to power, has kind of eaten himself. I think he's eaten himself alive on this. It's he's sacrificed so much to get to his power, but by doing that, even though he's appeased populist policy, it's only been for the political climb that he's done it. And now we're in a position where the populist movement is no longer serving him and it's outgrowing him. He basically ate his arm off.
Yeah, I mean, that's you could frame it that way, but I could say equally mean things about Pelosi and Schumer. I mean,
yeah, but you can't deny that Pelosi, Schumer's a little but Pelosi has been a maverick of getting actually policy done by the Democrats, and right, also compromising and.
Okay, but keep in mind, this was the woman who cattily ripped up Donald Trump's speech behind him.
Yeah.
Remember that?
No one likes Trump. It was symbolic.
Yeah, she's down in the mud with the dogs.
No. She just doesn't give a shit about earning brownie points on the other side of the aisle because she doesn't need to.
Okay, but all right, whatever.
But there's been no point. I think when you look back in the history of Pelosi, if we want to just talk on this, even when Democrats had when President Obama first became president back in 2008, he genuinely made a huge appeal to Republicans to try to get them on board. He had regular meetings with Senator Chuck Grassley, regular meetings with Roy Blunt, regular meetings with the Big Four. If you guys remember from getting the American actor that helped clear out Wall Street, met with the Big Four Republicans who was trying to negotiate with. No matter what he did, no matter what policy he did early on, House Republicans still blocked it. So Pelosi, here we are, 10 years later, they don't care anymore because it's even if they try to extend the hand gets swatted down. So it's you know what, ripping a paper, conservatives hate her, but they weren't going to agree with her in the first place anyways.
So to kind of touch base on one thing that I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the impeachment thing. Especially now that you made that comment from, what McConnell said. How much concern would you have had the impeachment gone through and he was impeached, that, or do you even still the way that it's happened, that impeachment is becoming a partisan weapon and something that is going to be more used and abused from a political standpoint rather than what it seems like its intention should be, which would be more of a criminal type conviction or working. At least in my opinion, that's what it is.
That's tough. I guess I could field this first, but my thoughts aren't really too clear on that. So, on the one hand, impeachments are political tools first and foremost. It is a political process. It's designed to be done by politicians, right? It's the whole thing. It's not necessarily a legal process. So it is expected that there's going to be partisanship always, or it's going to be a political less than a legal statement, more political than legal. But the frequency at which it's getting used, maybe. I thought that, look, it's tough. I don't know. It's tough to say. I could whiff waffle for about 20 minutes, but I think it will be used more frequently, but maybe less because of any sort of thing around impeachment and more about the fact that we're polarizing more and more, and each side trusts the other side less. So they'll use more and more tools to stick it to the other side.
Well, I mean, with that, it's less likely that any impeachment actually goes through at that point, right?
Not if you control both chambers. Well, no, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because it's 2/3.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
so yeah,
or whatever it is. Chris, what are your thoughts? Do you think it's losing what its intention was and becoming more of a political weapon, or do you think that's kind of what the intention was a bit?
No, I don't think so. I think both times that Trump's been impeached, they are both, impeachable offenses. Plenty more so than Bill Clinton's impeachment trial. And so I think we're going to see impeachments at the same frequency that we always have. Like, you didn't have an impeachment under Bush or Obama. You did with Clinton. You did with Trump. We'll see it just as much as we've always seen it. I mean, at the end of the day, very clearly, Trump did commit an impeachable act. McConnell, other Republicans are coming out and saying, yeah, he did this, but it's just, for whatever reason, due to policy and procedure, they're kind of swatting it out of the Senate and no, he needs to go through criminal trials. So, it's if people just impeach Trump because, I don't know, he never released his tax returns, that's a different story. That would have been frivolous, but this wasn't frivolous. This was a genuine impeachment.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were on it.
No, yeah. Good point. We'll see it as much as we've always seen it. The reality is, to become a president is a pretty hard thing to do. And so
anyone can do it. Look, Trump got there. Okay. Trump got in.
Well, basically, when you think about it, though, almost always the fight is so charged, and then once they're in office, it's so charged up right now that it's you better believe that Republicans are doing everything they possibly can, as Democrats have with Trump, and will with another Republican president. I'm sure Republicans are looking at everything they can to see if there's something that they can impeach Biden for. Like if Biden makes one wrong step, Republicans will click on that. So it's to be expected. But I think the trouble is, I guess, presidents trying to do everything they can to not commit something that could be foreseeably impeachable.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think Biden will be a little bit better at PR.
Yeah, I mean, easier said than done. When military stuff comes involved, it's all it takes is one failed mission, one helicopter crash for an impeachment trial to begin again.
I don't know. We'll see. There might be something.
I mean, look at Benghazi.
If I could predict a Biden impeachment, it would have to do something with probably to do with Hunter or any sort of family problems.
I feel like that's already been taken care of, though.
Yeah. Yes, it did already get shuffled under the carpet.
Yeah. If look at Benghazi. I think Benghazi could have been an Obama impeachment if Hillary didn't take the heat for it, for example.
I don't think she did take the heat for it. I think the Republicans gave her heat for it, but I don't think she ever admitted to any wrongdoing.
Well, she didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it was a sanctioned mission. It was from the Pentagon. She just oversaw certain decisions with it. But what I'm saying is, like, it was under the Obama administration. Like, if they wanted to, if she wasn't the one that went on trial, like, it probably could have led to an impeachment trial.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of doubt it. I don't think all that low level stuff usually flows up that high. Usually you're right. Somebody usually takes the fall, and in that case, whether she wanted to or not, or admitted to anything, it was Hillary. So you're right about that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. What do we have here? So I think I talked to Tim a little bit last week about Gina Carano's firing. Are you familiar with this at all?
Maybe. Can you?
So the Mandalorian actress that got let go from the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? So Tim and I talked about it a little bit last week, but I didn't have the tweets available. I have them this week. I kind of want to go over the tweets that led to her firing.
Yeah,
A little bit of background for anybody who's fresh and watching it new. Gina Carano is an actress. She was on The Mandalorian, which is the Disney Plus TV show. It's sort of their pilot show that really rocked them into the scene. She was fired for a series of tweets. The tweets were considered to be provocative. And Republicans are crying foul, right? We're saying it's cancel culture. And I frankly agree with it, because honestly, those are very mundane tweets. But I have them up.
Can you read them?
What's that?
Can you read them out?
Absolutely. So, all right. So I'm going to try to be as fair as possible with this, right? Because I think this is a genuine hard case. Like the actual truth of the situation, with no exaggeration, is a pretty solid case of cancel culture, which I know you're against as a rule, Chris. But we'll litigate this one specifically.
Yeah, sure.
So the final one, and we can talk about the other ones that sort of led up to Disney getting fed up with her, let's say. The final one, the straw that broke the camel's back, was her posting. It was actually a repost, and it's a post. It's a picture from pre-World War II. It's a Jewish woman running through the streets. She's got a bloody nose, and she's being hounded by a bunch of kids, right? And this was the citizens being encouraged to beat up Jews. So what it says is that Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? And that's the entirety of the caption. And then, like I said, there's the picture below it of the Jewish woman getting hounded through the streets.
You don't want to show it?
That's the tweet that took her out?
That's the tweet that took her out. That was the final one.
Yeah, she'd had a couple prior that kind of blew up. One was anti-mask.
Yeah, I have them here.
Stuff.
We can talk about them in a second if you want. Okay, I can actually pull them up.
Yeah, let's see all of them. Just because, I think we only see one variable. It's a little unfair, but if it was just that tweet, then yeah, it's stupid. She shouldn't be canceled. But
that's the one that did it. That's the one that did it.
Right. So I just want to be clear. This is the one that finally got her fired. This was considered anti-Semitic.
That's dumb. And I mean, for what it's worth, it's obviously not anti-Semitic. For what it's worth, I think whereas Hollywood and Disney, you end up in this deeper progressive area. Most Democrats don't coincide with that. That's the far progressive ideals. But yeah, it's stupid. She shouldn't be canceled for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have the other ones here. I'm not going to bother showing them because they don't actually show the tweets. They have the text for it. So let me read these to you. So these are the ones prior that sort of put her on the shit list, where they were just kind of waiting for something to can her for.
Wow.
Here's the full body of this one right here. Here's the whole thing. Jeff Epstein didn't kill himself.
Okay. Well, why is she tweeting that?
That's pretty lukewarm. That's, first of all, you don't even know if that's a joke.
It's a good point. I mean, he probably didn't kill himself.
That was a meme. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, that's fair game. You're right. That's fair game.
Okay. Let's see. What else do we have here? Oh,
I should just give like shitty reactions to all of these. Like, what? No, you can't. Do
Yeah. This one. This one is probably. You might think this is the most cancelable one. Where her Twitter bio, she put her pronouns as beep, bop, boop.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
The ones that I know that blew up before wasn't the Jeffrey Epstein one. And some of the other. She had one basically anti-mask. And I don't know.
She posted a comic of two people wearing masks over their eyes instead of their mouth. That was it.
No, she had one where she had made a statement. And I forget what the other one was, but I think it was anti-vaccine, maybe. They were conservative viewpoints, for sure.
Oh, but here's one. We need to clean up the election process so that we are not left feeling the way we do today. Put laws in place that protect us against voter fraud, investigate every state, film the counting, flush out the fake votes, require ID, make voter fraud end in 2020, fix the system. American flag emoji.
I mean, obviously she's saying that about Trump, but she's not wrong. Those are all fair things. I'm not.
Right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think for what it's worth, Marvel and Disney run a very, 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 very tight ship when it comes to their productions. And so they don't want, unless Disney's endorsed, and I know what you're going to say here, but I just want to say, like, understanding Disney, they don't want their stuff political. The only political things that they do are not technically political. They're like social justice. Like Disney's coming out and saying like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. But they're also trying to like, build the movement through, not build the movement. They're trying to change public perception on race dynamics through positive imagery of showing like, yeah, this is what, like, let's put a gay couple on the screen, because that used to never happen. It changed. The reality is, honest to God, and I'm going to make a couple points here, so please just follow along.
Yep.
Let me know if I cut out by any means as well, because I know my video seems a little busy. If the reality is, we know, like, there's a study out there. I got to pull it up. There's a study for everything, but generally speaking, imagery, positive perception of the LGBTQ community. There's more positive reception when you see this in Hollywood. The same was true in the 60s and 70s when interracial marriage was finally legalized. If you can believe that, it wasn't legalized until the 60s and 70s. But for what it's worth,
in certain places, right?
No, nationally in every state. 60s and 70s. I mean, Civil Rights Act, but there's still state laws that banned it after the Civil Rights Act, and it was contested. So go check that history. Isn't that messed up?
Do you mean the federally protected, or it was federally prohibited before that?
Technically, states, it was not federally protected before the Civil Rights Act.
Okay. Well, there's a difference there. It was
and
like
then there was,
in Connecticut, you could have gotten interracially married that whole time. Right?
Sure, because Connecticut's like super progressive, but but even still.
Right, I'm not. It sounds like I'm making mistakes. I'm just trying to clarify.
No, you're fine. You're just following along. Yeah.
No,
and for what it's worth, there was political gray area in states. I don't want to get off topic, but seeing LGBTQ community improves perception for many Americans, and this is like just a reality for many Americans. People don't interact with Black, Hispanic, minority, people of color at all. Other than, in remedial positions, like seeing somebody that's like a janitor and they're Hispanic. And so when you see something like Black Panther, where you have a Black superhero, it genuinely improves race relations. Like, video has huge power. And so that's Disney's mentality. It's like social justice. They're not out here like, pro-veteran, look at Captain America. All of Captain America is super pro-veteran. That's where Disney stands. And so Disney tries to stay very, very, very clear from allowing their actors to take part in anything political. Let
me stop you there, Chris, because it's the whole counter argument from the right is that Pedro Pascal, who is the other actor across the main star of The Mandalorian, posted a picture of kids in cages in 2018, and then right under it was a picture of a Nazi concentration camp. and he said this,
Yeah.
like
I
hashtag
think-
America 2018.
I think part of this too is like she's being treated unfairly as a woman. Like, they're like the reality is goalposts are set way further in this country for women, and so even though a dude got away with it, she's the female actor that's conservative, and they're holding.
I
this
doubt
against
she
her.
would agree with that.
I think
She
it's
may
more
not, but I
because
do.
I think it's more because she's on a conservative viewpoint and Pedro Pascal is a liberal viewpoint. So, and he probably also had less offenses. Possibly that was a part to play in it. But so we have a viewer, his name's Denny, and while you were talking about saying that by putting something on screen, gay marriage, black culture, things like that, it becomes more accepted and more understood. He kind of posted a question saying, doesn't that go along with saying then by having blood, violence, and gore in movies that becomes more accepted
No.
and things like that?
No, I mean, we know that video game violence, that type of stuff, doesn't actually correlate to real violence, but imagery generally does help people like change public perception. This happened in sitcoms. It happens in Disney movies. Like, when we're talking about like social justice related things, yeah, it makes an impact.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, let me speak to that. So as the resident bigot in the room, it is certainly true that when you see let's say trans people or gay relationships in a positive light, it absolutely helps you. I don't know. It helps you. It's like a free allowing you to see the people without having to actually travel to them. For some reason, it helps. It genuinely does help, and I've actually experienced this firsthand. I used to have like a not to get too personal, but I used to have like a serious ick factor with anything gay, man on man, woman on woman, fine, right? Because I'm a misogynist, but there was like serious ick factor. with that with me. But yeah, exactly. So, but I watched Magicians, which is like, it's super liberally cast, and there's a whole bunch of liberal themes all throughout it. But like watching a gay relationship in it, it just helps me tone down the sort of like reflexive ick factor that I had for two stubbly chins rubbing together.
You should go watch Queer Eye. Queer Eye is like a game changer.
Oh yeah. I gotta say, like, for example, that show right there. My dad, who's been a Republican his entire life, I actually don't know how he feels or felt about gay people. Never talked about it with him, but like, he loves that show, right? And there's no better way than to have an actual good product that has, gay people in it or trans people in it. And it has to be a good product. But when you have that, that's the most powerful way that you can convert people.
Well, think about it. Like,
I think the most important part of it is just showing that they're normal people.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like it's humanizing the differences, and that's not just for gay or anything. It's for any other. Like when I traveled around the world, I went to Europe, I went to China, and I've met these people. Like whatever stereotypes you may have or whatever you think, or like once you meet them, they become people, right? You realize that like, oh, that culture works too, right? Their civilization isn't crumbling beneath them, and they do things different than we do. And it helps you open your eyes and open your mind to say, okay, maybe there's some things that we don't do absolutely the best, and we need to be open-minded and look at things, right?
Think about this show. We're showing that conservatives are humans too.
Yeah, we're doing our best. We're doing our best.
But I do think
generally mistaken, but still human.
Totally accurate. I mean, like, and I think it's like when we understand studies, when we understand outcomes and all this good stuff, it's important to realize, like, it's a really valid question. Honestly, does seeing violence increase violence? And no, it doesn't. I mean, maybe it desensitizes it. Sure. I mean, after watching like 8 seasons of American Horror Story, I think if I saw someone's arm chopped off in real life, I wouldn't be as freaked out by it.
Right,
but I'm not going to go chop someone's arm off.
Is that a bad thing? That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
The fact
not
that
a bad
you're
thing at all.
not freaking out right there means you're useful to whatever catastrophe just happened.
Sure, if someone gets their arm chopped off, I can probably do something more valuable for it. But I'm not going to go and be the person that is chopping the arm off. So when we look at studies, it's kind of like just because one thing correlates into an outcome doesn't mean that other variables also correlate to a corresponding outcome. In layman's terms, seeing, like you said, Nate, seeing a gay couple, in a way changes the sensitivity. And like, oh, cool, yeah, that makes sense. There's two gay people, they're kissing. I'm not as freaked out about that anymore. It does not mean that like, wow, look, that person is getting pushed into a blender. I can't wait to go try that tomorrow.
Right.
I think
Yeah,
I think it matters to a degree. You have to be careful, right? Like similar to what you said, when you experience something over and over again, real or not real, you do become desensitized. And like to believe it or not, what you see, hear, and are taught as a kid is a huge part of who you are, right? Why in any specific region are the majority of people one religion? It's because that's what they're taught, that's what they believe, and that's what they continue to believe as they get older, right? It's what they're surrounded with. It's the information they have. So I think that if you are growing up and you're playing these games, and let's say that there was your favorite game and it was racist against red automobiles, right? And every time a red automobile came on the screen, the goal was to blow it up or something. I don't know. Like as you got older, you would have likely some sort of thing in your head that red automobiles are bad. You may never go buy a red automobile. I don't know.
But there's other things that, don't. So to speak on what Nate said, like, Nate, you shared like in The Magicians, there's a gay couple, and you've become. I would relatively say like it's not just the ick factor that you previously. Thanks for sharing that. I know it's not easy to like just throw that out there in the world. For some people, it's not, but you've desensitized to it. You've also became more positive. Like, okay, cool, I can understand a gay couple. But that doesn't mean you're going to go out and be gay now. It's not like the meme, like, oh no, honey, don't look. It's too late, mom. I've seen it all.
Right.
Playing a bunch of Call of Duty, maybe makes you want to go, sure, get a gun. Watching Queer Eye makes me want to interior decorate. It doesn't turn me gay. Playing Call of Duty maybe makes you want to go buy a gun or join the military, but you're not going to go and start like shooting up a Walmart because you watch Call of Duty.
Right.
No, but if you played Grand Theft Auto, you might.
Listen, I think it's all about.
I vividly remember being like 11 playing Grand Theft Auto and just like running people over with a fire truck. And why am I allowed to play that?
Still haven't done it, so yeah.
I think there's a fair argument to be made on the other side too, to say that like, we enjoy that game for a reason. There's a part of us that has I don't want to say it's a dream or a desire to do these things in real life, but there's something about it that in your subconscious or your conscious where it's fun, and you had this desire to know what it's like to run somebody over maybe, and you can do it in a video game, and that satisfies that need. Like I think
I don't think there's a 1-for-1 there though, because when
not 100%. I agree with you.
You aren't actually in the mindset of doing the thing that you're doing, right? Because you are very conscious of the fact that there's not an actual person right there, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
no, 100%.
So you're not. It's not that you're a sadist or you're a person who deep down wants to do these things and then gets his rocks off by doing it in video games. There is no connection, because you know that even though it's a computer model of a person, it doesn't have thoughts, feelings. It doesn't have a history. It doesn't, people aren't going to miss it.
Or
when
it
it's gone.
doesn't.
No, I 100% agree that it's not. It's not like that. Like, and that's not the point I was trying to make. I guess more along the lines of, that just because we have feelings or thoughts or desires or interest in something doesn't mean we act them out in the first place. And by playing a game that may introduce you to some of those feelings isn't going to make you act them out, I guess is the point that I was trying to get to.
I don't know what the expert mentality in this would be, but I do have to instinct wise side. I don't know. I don't have a violent tendency. I didn't run over 1,300 people in Grand Theft Auto because I have this desire to run people over in the world.
Maybe you did.
And I don't watch American Horror Story because I want to dismember people. It's just there's this shock factor. There's there's this video game, this fictionality to it. It's why we. Now granted, so this is something I would think is really screwed up. We're not all going to go crowd around the Coliseum and watch a person get mauled by a lion these days. It's and even then I would say that's a shock factor. You don't actually want to be the killing. So I think that's why, I'm actually glad, Nate, you're on the side of the fence of video game, no correlation. Because there are I tend to see it as more like an old school conservative belief.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that was a big thing in the 90s. Definitely getting
Yeah,
pushed by Christian conservatives.
moms against GTA, like that's
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
our viewer Denny made a comment that kind of go along with this, which I think is a good point to make, which is, and it kind of goes along with what I'm saying. What I said before is you have to be careful with what it is, though, because he said if you listen to music that preaches hate or watch enough movies or TV shows that hate, so it also preaches hate or whatever, you can become desensitized to it. And I actually take it a step further and say you could become supporter of it, right? You may
so?
start
Yeah.
believing these things.
Yeah.
And
You guys think so?
yeah, 100%. I think you can.
But you can get radicalized by
Yeah, that's how those things happen.
videos.
Yeah,
Maybe.
you get radicalized, and
It depends
I
on what it
agree.
is. It depends, I would say.
Well,
but I don't think the vast majority do, and I don't think that it happens for most people quickly or easily. Like, and for those that it does happen to, my feeling is, and I'm not an expert on this, but my feeling is there was already
Right.
a weakness there, or a sensitivity to something there that is getting exploited by these media that are preaching those things.
You know, I this is not a fair comparison. I'm going to do something anecdotal, but it's like, you know, I'm Christian, but like I listen to Black Dahlia Murder and Slayer and Avenged Sevenfold, and like Black Dahlia Murder is literally like lyrics are like, yeah, we killed Christ. Like it's pretty messed up, but like I don't know. I like death metal. I also like Taylor
They're
Swift.
2,000-year-old Romans. What?
What?
Said that band is made up of 2,000-year-old Romans.
Oh, we
Yeah,
killed
something like
Jesus.
that.
Yeah.
Terrible,
It's like-
terrible joke. Terrible. We're gonna edit that one out, boys and girls.
Yeah. No, but I'll listen to like Black Dahlia Murder and stuff, and I'm not. You know, I listen to it as like a fiction. It's like it's storytelling. That's what it's trying to like. You know, they make concept albums. It's like they don't actually believe this stuff. It's like they're writing it. It's like listening to a horror movie basically. And so, but I also realize, you know, I think Tim, what you said, I totally agree with. I think there has to be like some cracks in someone's foundation
Right.
to begin with. Like you have to already have this leniency of like extreme atheism or extreme like something, and then you listen to Black Dahlia and you're like, yeah, 666, and then
Right.
you go,
It's usually an outlet more than a causer, I would say.
yeah, someone like you know, if you're going to shoot up a Walmart, listening to Black Dahlia Murder is not going to make you more likely
Right.
to shoot up a Walmart.
Yeah, you
were
were
going to do
yeah.
it. So.
So let me
Maybe. I
let me
think
tie
there's a
this
piece
back
to that.
in, right? So we've done a nice long long loop de loop. So I all right. So I put out you know what I think, right? Establishing an empathetic connection between you and people that you are maybe slightly uncomfortable with, or you know whatever it may be. Establishing that empathetic connection through genuinely good art forms is the way to go. However, I will make sure that I have to push back on a little bit of it, right, to make sure that you know we have to do this right. So number one, if your art suffers because of your agenda of doing this, it's not going to work. It's actually just going to piss people off, right? So if you arbitrarily pump in a transparent agenda, right? So like if you, I'm trying to come up with a specific example, but if it's very clear that your agenda with a movie is not just to make a good movie, but to force or push something on somebody, it's going to fail spectacularly and probably backfire.
Sure. I think it's showing, not doing, and that's like the clear
Correct.
art form about like Black Panther, like masters it. Like Black Panther is like
Yes, absolutely.
golden. Captain Marvel like really captures it. Really captures like, you know, women are capable of doing all, you know, they can transcend that the 1950s role of like, hi, I'm a subservient housewife. But if you want to be a housewife, do it. But if you don't want to be a housewife, don't do it. So I think that's what Captain Marvel really does. Now other shows, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like oh my god. Like I loved season 1 of Arrow, for example, and then Arrow.
I could not stand that show.
It got so bad. Because
it was bad the whole way through, man. And this isn't even a political
Arrow,
thing. I just hated it. Ugh.
Come on, Arrow is
CW, man.
up through the first few seasons,
CW.
and then it got. And I am social justice, like, but it gets really, really in your face, and I'm like,
I think I heard about
I'm just
that,
trying
yeah.
to see, like, I'm just trying to see someone shoot arrows, like, and like,
Yeah.
I just want to see, you know, Batman Light do some cool stuff.
Listen. this, and I can universalize this for everybody. Okay, so this is for the people on the right and the left, right? Back in the 90s, from what I remember, you were preachy pearl clutchers and you pushed everybody away. You did not win a single person by being a preachy pearl clutcher. And I'm going to say the same exact thing to the radical left at this point. If you clutch your pearls and be preachy about it, you will drive people away. And the people that you're looking to help will suffer for it, right?
I'm not sure what a pearl clutcher is, but I'm going to Google that on Pornhub later.
It's like an old crone clutching her pearls and being very, oh, I say.
Ah, okay.
You know what? Really funny. Speaking of clutching things,
I'm not going to Google that later now.
No, stop. My student shared the funniest thing with me. He's like, yeah, I was in the elevator with like a white woman, and my student's black, and like the white woman like clutched her purse, like held it really tight. And so my student flipped his backpack around and held it really tight. He's like,
nice.
Oh,
that's awesome. So like, while we were talking,
I love that.
I love that. I'm glad he did that. That's awesome. While we were talking, Denny posted a question or a comment more that resonated very heavily with a post, a Twitter post that I was going to show as for a discussion point. So I thought it would be a good segue over.
Yeah.
So the one what Denny posted was, he said, when the left preaches that people should be allowed to be open to who they are, but as soon as you disagree with something that the left preaches, then you're labeled or canceled or whatever, right? So it's kind of a contradictory thing. And that kind of goes along with this this particular tweet that I saw that I thought was also interesting. That on the right is a big argument, against cancel culture, but they do it as well. So just thought this would be a nice Kickstarter for a quick conversation on, do you think the right cancels too? Nate, you go.
You have to be in power to cancel. So I would agree that those guys are being hypocritical 100%. And wherever Republicans are canceling people, that's hypocritical. But like I keep pointing out, the institutions, the massive institutions, Hollywood, the media, big tech, like all of the major cultural institutions are dominated by the left. And so they're the ones doing the canceling. I'm not saying the Republicans wouldn't, but they're the ones doing it.
And look, for what it's worth, I mean, I deal with this sometimes. I was talking to Nate about this the other day. Like, I definitely, like, at my heart, I'm a socialist. Like, at my heart, like, I truly want a world that is, like, socialist, like, democratic socialism for the win. Maybe not communism. I don't want to, like, not that type of stuff. But, I'm here for it. I'm here for socialist policies. And But sometimes I'll butt heads with other progressives because, like, I'll say something that is maybe more moderate in actuality, like, and it's like there's not even like, hey, I'm on the same side, and it's like, no, you're a bigot. I'm like, whoa, like I was just saying that maybe $10,000 off of our student debt isn't that bad. Maybe 50,000 is a bit idealistic. I want to cancel all of it, but hey, I'll take 10,000. And that's like, no, your expectations are too low. So I think the left, for what it's worth, it's probably not going to work. But I would like to believe, for my fellow lefties, maybe like hone that in. Like, not everything is personal. I need to be better at that myself. Not everything is personal, but also, when it comes to policy, when it comes to the way people believe in philosophy, like, if someone isn't like straight up like hateful, but they're just suggesting different, beliefs or ways of doing things, that's not that doesn't call for an immediate like shut down and block. We should have discourse. It's why this, like, to me, this podcast matters. Like, we should have discourse.
Right. I have a diagnosis, my professional right-wing incorrect diagnosis. But what do you guys think about this?
Too late, you're canceled.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think one of the big problems, and I think this is unique to the left, right? And whenever I say this, Tim's ears perk up because he's like, oh yeah, bullshit. But I think.
So to anyone viewing, I generally take the stance that both sides have almost always
I know.
the same
He
problems.
likes to smack our heads together.
Like you'll be calling one side out for the other thing, and I'm like, yeah, you do the same shit.
Listen, okay. So then disagree with me. Prove me. Change my mind. All right. I think a big problem that is unique to the left is that they implement purity tests at a much larger scale than the right does. Right. The right.
What do you mean by purity test?
So by that I mean that anything that deviates from the bleeding edge can be instantly canceled and is seen as morally impure. That you're bad. Right. So if you don't.
Yeah.
Right, so it's not that it's Native, it's not Native Americans anymore. Now it's technically, I think it's people of color, or I think there's even one further than that now. And there's like First Nations now. It's not. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a whole bunch of things mixed up here. But like my point is like, if you're not on the bleeding edge of that, you fail the purity test, and you actually can be thrown out of polite culture right away.
Honestly, I do see that a bit. It's very much like, for example, like AOC said something today that I'm like, really good argument, but it's just not the way things can actually probably happen.
Right.
She's like bringing it back to student debt. She made a relatively strong argument, right? It's like, hey, if we forgive $10,000 plus interest of student debt, we're not going to see the positive impact of Biden's policy for another couple of decades until the rest of this loans. It's like saying, like, if you were going to take 10 years to pay off your loans, now it's going to take you 7 years, meaning that we're not going to see the outcome for 7 years. And therefore, we're causing a lot of harm to people that like need that relief now. Not wrong. In my opinion, I think it's a really good argument.
It'll pay off all my remaining student debt, so 10 grand's fine for me. Let's get it done.
But when you look at the actual like budget, though, like you can't just forgive $50,000, especially through executive order. Biden, I think, is being pretty constrained. He's like, yeah, this is something that needs to go through Congress. Like if it fails in Congress, I'll write an executive order. But like let's use Congress first as like a medium, because also, executive orders are easier to undo than congressional bills. And so I think for a lot of people that like myself that are like, yeah, I want free college. I want free college. But I also realize that in the system that we currently are operating in, that's not something that's going to happen. And we need to be like realistic and understand the system that we're functioning in. We are not Denmark. We are the United States. You only have Texas that's trying to operate on its own freaking electric grid. So when you're talking about stuff like that, 10 grand is a blessing. That is like something that I don't even think people 10 years ago could have even dreamed of in a president doing. Surely people didn't think Obama would do that.
Wait, so what was purity test about her tweet?
Oh, if you're not for the 50,000, you're kind of wrong. Like you're letting people like drown in debt and not be able to like survive, and they're gonna be crushed by poverty unless you forgive 50,000.
Right, you're a bad person. You hate poor people.
What?
Yeah.
Right, you're a bad person. You hate.
Yeah, you hate the poor people.
Right. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I agree with AOC's argument. I just know that in our current system, there's no way we can provide $50,000 of debt relief to everybody. It's just not possible.
What do you think about that, Tim? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I overblown?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one because I'm not deep enough in some of the cultures to say that one happens more than the other. Right? Your argument was, yeah, both sides do it, but the left does it to a larger degree.
Yeah. Yep.
But also, cancel culture, as you said, requires you to be in power, and the left
Correct.
has been a little. So it's hard for me to say. Is it a cultural thing because of it being a progressive belief system versus a conservative belief system, or just the powers that be and how things are? It gets more attention now. But to touch base on the topic that we talked on what his example, we talked a little bit last week about the student debt relief. Chris, you weren't able to be there for that one, but one of the big things that we talked about, at least from my opinion, was like I'm all about the government somehow supporting, paying for, helping with higher education. I think it's become less of a extra education requirement and more of a critical education requirement to actually participate in the workforce these days. But I'm not okay with the same amount or all education being paid for. Like if somebody decided to go to community college versus somebody deciding to try and go to a private state college or like a Harvard or something that costs 5 times more, they both shouldn't get the same get their school completely paid for, right? Like, and at least I don't think they should from the government's perspective. So I think there should be a limit that says on one side that's like, okay, for a baseline education that you need to be able to be suitable in the workforce, I'm comfortable with trying to find a way for the government to support that, but not to pay off all student debt or pay for all schooling going forward. And then the second thing is, I think it needs to be focused on jobs and careers that are going to be paying back more to
Yes, agreed.
the society than, and like an example I gave to Nate was like, when I was a kid, I would have loved to be an archaeologist, right? Like, and if school was free and I didn't care about income, I would have ended up doing that. But the bottom line was it wasn't free, and I knew that I needed to be able to support a family when I grew up. So I went for engineering instead, a more practical education that provides more for society, more for myself, more for the family. And
Plus,
I
you can
think
do anything with an engineering degree. God.
and so I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, I would rather, if the government is limited on budget, put that money towards educations that are going to benefit society than any education. Like if I wanted to go back to school and get a master's in art history, like that should be on me to do. The government shouldn't pay for that. Chris,
I'll say
thoughts, Chris?
I'll say a few things. The first one is when it comes to like the moral test. When it comes to social issues, that is when I'm much more unbudging as like someone on the left, because I stopped thinking those as political and more of like social problems. For example, you know, if you're not going to bake a cake for the LGBTQ community, then yeah, there's no negotiation to me on that side. There is no compromise. There's no compromise when it comes to like racism. Like, don't be racist. There's no compromise when it comes to anti-Semitism, these types of things. And please, that's the easy thing to poke at. Can't confuse, being pro-Palestine as anti-Semitism. That's a political issue being conflated with a social dynamic. But with that said, when it comes to student debt, to just comment on that, I think that it's not the government's decision or place to decide what degree people get. I think also some people have like, the reality is, Tim, like I respect you so much for having an engineering degree. My fiance is an engineer. I couldn't do that for the life of me. But I do, I do feel like I have a pretty strong affinity towards the liberal arts, building nonprofits, that type of stuff. I'm good at, and I really love it. And so I think that where the test is, and I also agree, yeah, if someone goes to, one of those like really bougie state schools that has like a super slide, and that's because it costs like $10 more because you have a super slide at your school, which is a real thing. Liberty does that.
Is it really?
Yeah, you probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't have that. But I think free community college, regardless of your degree, because one, free community college is already for most people pretty much covered by Pell Grants. And to cover the rest of that, or to make it universal, one, it gives plenty of people that want to be engineers, if they want to be financially privy, they get to cut out 2 years of expensive education, like because you get your gen eds done. There's plenty of like immediate transfer programs. You go to Tungus Community College in Connecticut. You study engineering technology as an associate's degree. You pretty much get an automatic transfer into a 4 years program. Then you only got 2 years left, and yeah, you're gonna still have some debt, but nowhere near what you would have had. You just cut out like 2 years of debt. So free community college, I think, is a safer proxy of like, yeah, if someone goes for, I know conservatives love to say like underwater basket weaving. Sure,
dance therapy is the best one that I've heard so far.
It's so funny, but there's something to be said about the power of a liberal arts education because my degree, to speak on this one last moment, even my master's is actually a master's in liberal arts with a focus in government. It's at Harvard, but it's a liberal arts degree. And what the argument for is, it's not that I'm leaving the school with like expertise in engineering or expertise in one area, but I do have expertise in being malleable. And so I do have a strong foundation in policy, but there's also something you said about, when I needed to learn how to do accounting and taxes for my nonprofit, I was able to do that. And pretty quickly, I was able to watch my videos. I was able to decipher what is good information versus bad information, value hard work, value research. for my colleagues and other individuals who I know that in the professional for the liberal arts field of liberal arts, it's the same game for them. You know, they might have gotten a liberal arts degree, but now they're working in insurance, and they're able to like pick up things in insurance pretty quickly because they learn how to be malleable versus like, hey, let me build expertise in one skill, and that's it. And also, you know, there's a civic mindedness that comes to it. I'm not here to advocate for gen eds for the rest of my life. I think gen ed. Gen eds could be reformed. Yeah. I think it could be reduced. They're still critical. I think also the quality of your gen eds is a different story. Like, you know, just being able to like throw a dart at a wall and be like, oh, cool, I guess I'm taking this class this semester.
Hey, that's how I got to take my only social justice class.
Well, and I think what's unfortunate is like, you know, you there's something to be said about quality education in the gen ed. So lots of problems at hand, but to sum it up, you know, free community college is the way to go.
Yeah, so I'll hop in. I'll give my quick sense on that. Mine's real easy. Privatize all the college industry. The private market, the free market will drive down the costs exponentially, and then you can let the free market decide what a degree is worth, right? So if you're
why are private schools more expensive?
They're not subsidized. They're not subsidized.
Exactly. Because
state universities. You know, state universities cost about the same as public, but they're subsidized. So to go to, you know, Southern Connecticut, Central, Eastern Connecticut State, your tuition is only $10,000 a year. But if it was unsubsidized by the government, it'd be $20,000 a year. That's not including room and board.
Right.
So it's the same. So private schools aren't doing any better.
That's debatable. But anyways, my point is I love the free market. You know, I don't have the T-shirt, but I love it.
One thing I wanted to close on, just to make sure my point got across. I wasn't saying that we should only pay for technical things. I do think that some liberal arts and other things definitely would warrant being covered. I just meant that I think there should, if they're going to pay for full degrees and for full schooling, there should be some, in my opinion, exclusion of fringe educations that aren't really targeted at being productive in the or maybe in society. It's more for just interest based kind of thing, you know. Maybe
you can even treat it like this would never happen, but it'd be a great thing to happen if it was possible. You can almost treat it like how loan forgiveness works, or you can incentivize certain industries. Like if you're a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, there's like built-in incentives for that. If you work for a nonprofit for 10 years and you have a ton of debt, it's forgivable after 10 years. Maybe that's something we can do as well. Like it's like, yeah, you know, your 4-year degree isn't going to be covered if it's non-STEM, for example, or education or nursing. But if you go for engineering, maybe there's a loan forgiveness baked into that. You know, you do 3 to 5 years of you stay in the field for 5 years, and boom, there's a loan forgiveness built in. So extra incentive to do it.
Listen, I really like the idea of everybody making the decision on what degree they get based off of, you know, cost benefit analysis, right? So it's just as simple as this degree costs X amount of money. It's going to return me a career that pays me X amount of money. I should or should not do it based off of that. Like that should be it, right? That should be the only calculation that goes in, right? And then
I think interest and skill and ability are important.
Yeah.
What's that?
And I think loan forgiveness helps control for that, because, you know, if you just say that, let's say nursing degrees are now free, right? Well, that's going to be problematic, because then everybody's going to try to get a nursing degree, and then technically there's going to be more nurses than there are jobs. But instead, what nursing does is that nursing offers loan forgiveness if you work in a at-needs hospital and you have your degree and you do it for a couple of years, because that means it's like, yeah, no one's going for a nursing degree and then working at an at-risk hospital or a high-needs hospital just because like, yeah, I'm going to get loan forgiveness in 3 years because
I'd be comfortable with it just saying like you're employed in the field that your education was based in, right? Same. Like it's, to me, it's not as much about. And the reason I say that is like, let's say you work at a nursing home or whatever the requirement is. Well, now every nursing home job is going to pay a shit ton less because everybody wants to take that job to get loan forgiveness, right? Like it alters things. Right. But my goal more was Like, I just don't want the government or myself, taxpayers, to go out and start paying for a bunch of educations that people are getting that they never really needed or used, right?
Correct.
So, if you went to school for art history and then you went and became a museum curator or something, great, right? You're using your degree, you're using that education that's provided to better society and put something forth. That's great, but and so maybe the answer is looking at a way to say, if you work in the field of the degree that you got for X number of years, then you get a loan forgiveness or something. I think that's a good. I think that could be a good balance.
I say let them. I'm just kidding.
I think at the end of the day, that something has to be done. So I think free community college becomes the easiest way of accomplishing all of this. I don't think we're ever going to see a free 4-year, at least not for the next 20, 30 years.
I would hope not.
We'll see universal health.
$50,000 a loan forgiveness should get you pretty damn close to a free 4-year.
Basically, I mean, I think we'll see universal healthcare way before 4-year college.
I prefer going forward in paying for college for people rather than retroactively doing it, because as me and Nate talked about last week, like, we made specific decisions based on expecting that we had to pay these loans back.
Yep.
And
I knew exactly what I was getting myself.
People that made bad decisions or did bad, didn't, like, I don't know. Like, I hate to say, like, they should have to deal with lay in the bed they made, or whatever. I don't really want to put it that way, but that's kind of the thought, I guess.
I agree. I mean, I agree to a point, because, I have student debt too, and it was calculated. There was a calculated risk into it. I knew that if I took this on, I knew no matter what, I would be able to pay it off based on my employability. But with that said, when we actually look at the data and the numbers, and I'll share that with you guys later, but, excuse me.
$1 million.
A lot of first generation low income individuals get finessed into really frivolous colleges without understanding the dynamics in the whole picture. So especially, we see that African American and Black women from poor communities more likely to end up at for-profit colleges. It's not by accident. We see the same thing with Hispanic men, Black men. We see poor whites, end up in the same dynamic. When you look at class, especially, you see a lot of people that are in the lower class, first gen, ending up in like really frivolous. They end up going to Hofstra and getting a $200,000 degree in theater because they thought that they didn't understand the dynamics of what does it actually mean to pay loans back. They said, oh yeah, you take out this loan, it's gonna be an investment in your life. I used to work in an admissions office, and so the slides aren't just like, yeah, you're gonna get a bunch of money or whatever, but you say things like, and I didn't say these things. I was conscious of it. I was like, listen, know what you're getting into. But the literal slides of an admissions pitch is, a person with a college degree earns this much more per year in a lifetime. So it's like, if you take out $100,000 in debt, well, just know that over the course of 10 years, you're going to make way more than that. And so, on the average, maybe in the aggregate, there's a truth to that. But that's
generally speaking, that is true, actually.
It's true, but like, you end up with people like, and that's why I went to college, right? That's why I'm sure we all went to college, because we want to make more money. But a lot of people end up in these frivolous debt schemes. Some people go to college not ready for it; they fail out, and I get it. There's individual responsibility, but it's like we also have
to end on the parents as well.
Yeah. So it's like, do we want an 18-year-old to suffer the consequences of that $90,000 loan because they dropped out their sophomore year when they were 19 for the rest of their life? Or I don't know. There's no easy answers to that. I guess the free market.
Do I want them to? No, but at the same time, should somebody else be responsible to pay for those decisions?
Good answer, Tim.
Also, no, right? Like, so where's the magic bullet here to
indentured servitude?
Making people make prepared.
We tried that. It didn't work out.
Actually, how about this? Mandatory 2 years in the military for everybody. How's that? Then you have to decide. Then you have to decide when you're 20 what to do.
I think that we should all do some sort of national service. I think Belgium is ahead of the game because they do that.
So
there's a lot of countries
that too. I think they do mandatory.
or did. I think it's less common now. But
Great Britain basically says, like, if you don't go to college, then you go to the military.
Huh.
So
it sounds like authoritarianism to me.
Since we're talking about schools, if you guys are okay, I have another school-based article to transition over to, and that
Well,
actually this one.
hold on. Chris, did you have something you wanted to show before we let
Oh,
Tim do
sorry.
No, I wanted to talk about was like a Biden student debt gig, but it seems like we already pretty much tackled
There you
that.
go.
So I think
Perfect.
This one was actually sent to me by Denny, the guy who's the viewer, right before we started.
Thanks, Danny.
And
Hey, we're loving the engagement, man. It's
yeah, definitely. So, I thought it was interesting enough to drive conversation at least, so we should bring it up. So, have you guys seen this article?
Oh my God, yes. Oh, thanks, Danny. I didn't bother looking this up because it's just too. I sometimes I don't want to fight with Chris too much, but this one right here.
Is my stream goofing up again? Hold on, let me.
No,
pop
I can see you. You're good.
Okay, I'm looking at it on YouTube, and hold on. I'm gonna turn it on and off real quick.
Classic.
There we go. All right.
It just got hijacked. This was a story that got hijacked a bit. And
was it? Oh God, please explain. I need it.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah. No, I mean
Wait. Well, hold on. Explain for the audience what this is first, right?
Yeah, Tim, you can go for it.
So I read through the article. Long story short, I think this is actually the principal of the school, but the principal of the school provided, I think, the students and also the parents some papers that they were written by, I forget the guy's name, but he's some professor of something at some university. Here you go, Associate Professor of African American Studies at Northwestern University, so Barner Hess. And it's a paper that talks about the 8 white identities, and let me see. And they go from white supremacist all the way to white abolitionist, and they have definitions and all that. So, this article to begin with is very, very targeted and attacking to the left culture. I mean, you can see, the quote woke, post, right? Offensive, right? So when you read through this, you have to be careful to take into account like their perspective and what they're trying to push. But definitely it's kind of, as you read through it, it makes it seem like the teachers like really pushing this on people, but the way it sounded,
quick, Tim, for the audience, give them a spot. Give them like 1, maybe 3, 6, and 8.
Okay, so 1, white supremacist says clearly marked white society that preserves names and values white superiority. So that's like the worst type of white person. The middle road, like a 4, white benefit, says sympathetic to a set of issues, but only privately, won't speak or act in solidarity publicly because benefiting through whiteness in public. So basically like, yeah, we like our benefits. We think it sucks that people are unequal, but we like our benefits and we don't speak out about it. And then 8, which would be the highest, would be white abolitionist, says changing institutions, dismantling whiteness, and not allowing whiteness to reassert itself. And I haven't read this whole paper. I just kind of read through the article here, and I'll leave it on this here for a second. But I think my gut feeling is that this was twisted a little bit for the article, but at the same time, like my feeling on this paper that the guy wrote is that it is, I don't know,
fringy. Go ahead.
Yeah, fringy. I almost wanted to say racist in itself. Like,
really
trying, like, how bad would it be if I wrote a paper and said, here are the 8 types of black people, right? Like that wouldn't be accepted at all.
It actually included black people in white benefit, I believe. It's now one of them includes people of color. It's like somewhere in the middle, but it's like black people who don't agree with the left end up in that category.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'll let Chris talk about it. It seems like he knows.
Yeah,
he's looked at this more. So, Chris, what's your take?
I mean, it's really meant to be a relatively so. The idea of whiteness is the reason why it would be wrong to say like here's the 8 type of black people is because white people have the political political authority and social political authority in the country, and have had since the foundation of our country. So even today, even though like you don't have segregation, you still have a lot of the outcomes of segregation. You still have a lot of the same dynamics, the same consequences have definitely persisted. And so what this is saying is like, it's not meant to be an attack on white people. It's simply meant to categorize like the process of becoming like, and it's not even saying like, yeah, I feel bad because I'm white. That's not what it's saying. It's not trying to make you feel bad for being white. It's saying like,
it literally says does not allow whiteness to return.
Whiteness to return, as in like the power dynamic that white people have had over people of color. So that's
okay. Can you? Let me. I'm going to let you, and I want you to continue. I want you to continue explaining this. But can you see how absolutely insane this looks to people? How this?
Yeah, I can see how this.
But
and I'm not
just look at the wording.
How this is racist, right? This is
look
racist
at the wording.
against white people.
It says whiteness, not racial inequality or white dominance. Like it's just whiteness, the act of being white. Like the wording of it in itself is racist.
Sure. I think it's being taken out of the circle of, and this is the issue, like something like this is not meant to be taught at an elementary, middle school. It's meant to be like spoken about in an academic circle. It's like when you're diving into like us, right? We can talk about this and say, okay, let me like not just point and be like, oh my God, they're making my 5-year-old little kid hate himself for being white. Like, right? Like, we can talk about it a little bit more comprehensively, conducively, and our listeners can probably listen more conducively because we are arguably speaking in an academic circle. We're very well educated people in our respective fields. And so we can talk about this. I'm not saying that uneducated people can talk about this, but there's a
children are not, certainly. Children are definitely off the list of reading this.
Right? And so the point of what this is trying to say and how it should be framed to the public is like when you're talking about this, like if I was speaking this to somebody brand new, like what is this? I would say, the point of it being is that, we're not trying to make people feel bad about being white. We're not trying to make people feel bad about being any color. What we are trying to acknowledge is that we live in a system and, try to just bear with me on this. Like we live in a system that has privileges towards lighter skin. The fact of the matter is it's not a socioeconomic privilege. It is a social navigation privilege. If I go into a Target or a retail store and I put a hoodie on and people see me, they're not really going to think too much about it. And this is the most trivial example I can give. So please don't like take this whole concept on this one trivial example.
I know. I won't.
Easiest way I can explain it. And I'm going to make a second point too, but if I walk around in a retail store with a hoodie on, sweatpants, baggy pants, no one's going to say anything to me. No one's going to think twice. If I show up in my pajamas, people might look at me weird. But if I am a person of color and I'm showing up in a hoodie, probably going to be followed. And I can actually speak on that, and because they're going to think that they're stealing, because the stereotype, we've made this presumption that African American, Black people with darker skin are super predators, like the 90s. They're people who are going to steal. They're people you got to clutch your purse around. I remember working at a retail store, and I remember my manager explicitly saying, like, hey, we had a person come in wearing a hoodie, go follow him. And I walked over, and it was like a teenager who was Black, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to follow the dude. That's insane. And they didn't.
Would you have had a problem following him had he been white?
I never once have been asked to follow a white person in a hoodie, and plenty of people. It was a sporting store, so plenty of people came in hoodies that were white, wearing like a hat.
I know, but that's not the question. Like, you went to go do what you were told to do until you saw that he was Black, and then you felt like it was, a racially targeted thing. So then you decided you wouldn't do it. But prior to finding out that he was Black, you were okay, I guess, going up to follow him.
I walked over to check it out, but I would have. I said, I'm like, are you sure? And like, yeah. I'm like, I walked over just to see who they were, and I'm like, no, I'm not following somebody. They don't look suspicious. They were Black. And I had never been asked to follow somebody who's white in a hoodie. I want to be clear in that. Never once. And if they were white, I would have said the same thing. I'm like, this is not someone suspicious. Now, if I walked over and I don't know, they were carrying around like an AK-47 in the middle of a retail store, that's a different story. Or if they were wearing, I don't know, if they came in with like a trash bag and they were throwing stuff in it, sure, that's a different story, right? but they weren't. They were buying like a really expensive baseball. And so, that's what I'm making the point of is that social navigation becomes inundated when and bogged down when you're a person of color in this country. The reality is, and we talked about this before, and so I don't want to rehash a point, and we're going to go down. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but like, if you get two resumes in front of you, absolutely identical, the person with the foreign sounding name is going to have a harder chance getting an interview with you. And when you multiply this times like 30 million people, you end up with some systematic oppression. You end up with some systematic problems. And so the goal, what this is basically saying is like, hey, you
should name your kids different.
Just give 2 interviews. That's what
everyone should be Bob.
Well, this is the point of like, acknowledging whiteness. Just give everybody an interview that's qualified and then make a decision. Do things that are like, be racial sensitive, be race sensitive, be conscious that, we have been programmed with the media, with other influences to have certain perceptions of people of color since we were a kid. I remember, all right, so here's big self-disclosure. I definitely remember like going into 1st grade and then going home. And my mom was like, "Did you like school?" And I'm like, "I don't know. There was black people there, and I was scared of them because like my mom was into drugs, and we were always spending time around people who were." And she told me like, "Be very careful around black people." Like my mom was racist. Like she was racist, and that like came onto me as a 4-year-old. Like you aren't racist as a 4-year-old. Everything you're saying is a mirror of who you're around, and so that's the honest explanation of like understanding how powerful racism and white supremacism in the society. My mom wasn't a white supremacist. She just like, I don't know, was weird around people who were black. That's racism. That's problematic. That's something that needs to be dismantled.
So, all right, and I know the answer to this, so I almost don't want to ask it, but for the viewers, why can't you just say white supremacist, right? Because you already have white supremacists on that scale, but you departed from white supremacy a long time ago.
Well,
right?
because like we all benefit. All white people benefit from the decisions of white supremacy of the last century.
I actually don't hate, in a way, the scale that he's making here and saying that like, although because it's like the 8 white identities, like if you're white, you're one of these. Like I don't like the way he approached it, but I do see some truth behind this, the fact of saying like there's a sliding scale of, if you want to say, racism, right? Like you can absolutely be a supremacist. It doesn't, white, whatever color, right? And strongly hate or believe in superiority of one race over another or whatever, all the way up to, the opposite scale where you think your race is subordinate to another race, right? You could believe a wide range of things. So I don't think it should just be you're either a white supremacist or you're not racist, right? Like there's a lot of different belief systems and ways that it could be. So I'm okay with there being some sort of scale, but I don't like the way he approached it and the way that it's targeted. Like,
it shouldn't be. The reality is like something like this is meant to be an academic circle conversation where someone can say like, yeah, let me give you my vulnerability of a time that I have generally like, when you're in counseling circles, this would be brought up in like a counseling program, like, because you're going to be working with people of all different races, ethnicities, backgrounds. You got to be honest. Like someone's going to be like, yeah, I remember clutching my purse here. I remember being afraid because there was a black person in my neighborhood. I remember being afraid that someone knocked on my window or my door. And these are things that a lot of white people have experienced in their life. And so when you're in these circles, you share this out and you use this acknowledgement of whiteness to kind of help, help start, just understanding the way the world is. And it's not this place of, understanding the benefits that people have had of being white from the socio-political decisions of the past 200 years. And so in an academic circle, we can really break this down. In our circle right here, we can really talk about this. Like, honestly, I'm sure everybody here has had an experience where, like, I don't know, probably been scared around a minority. And that's something that we need to like talk about and be like, wow, why was I afraid to be that? Why was I afraid to be around that person? Why did I notice my heart rate go up? And that's because we've been programmed that way. And we need to start breaking down those biases. I remember when I was a teacher in pretty much an all black school, I had a friend come in and she was like, Chris, I'm like really nervous to be here. I'm like, is it because like everybody's black? And she like kind of looked at me like freaked out. I'm like, look, it's like, you got to kind of change kind of change the way you see the world. And not just see the world, but engage with the world. And so we can talk about it like this. When you bring this up to a bunch of like 7th graders, you're just making them feel really guilty about being white because you can't possibly engage in like the philosophical academic dynamic of this conversation with 7th graders.
Yeah. So again, thanks, Danny, for bringing this up. I have an article that we can swivel to with this, but just on this topic, this is kind of my bread and butter. This is like, I love culture stuff. Culture is why I'm here. All this policy and stuff. It's probably more important, or no, I would say it's equally as important. But I focus in on the culture stuff. But honestly, this is probably one of my I honestly think this is a reprehensible ideology for a bunch of reasons. And it's very complicated, and I can't really get into all of it tonight. But like, it basically is, it's effective racism in implementation, right? So not necessarily in intent, but in implementation, right? And so what I mean by that is that the ideology behind this, which is critical race theory, results in a whole bunch of, it results in sort of mandatory sort of re-rigging, which ends up putting your finger on the scale in favor of minorities, which then is essentially disadvantaging anybody else, right? So in many cases, that's actually Asian people, not white people. But I guess I could hit that point real quick. So the counter narrative to the white privilege narrative is that, well, white people aren't on top of the country, are we? We're not. We are the largest part of the population, but Asian people are by far more wealthy. Indians are by far more wealthy and more successful. We're not the happiest demographic. Actually, we are, but it's usually foreign-born people who are more happy.
But like look at any government, any Congress. Pretty much every single person is a white dude.
Okay, so then why are all the Asians in their constituency more rich than the white people in their constituency?
I don't know if that's legitimate, but I feel
that is a legitimate fact. Asian Americans are more wealthy per capita than white people.
There's got to be another way of looking at that statistic.
Why would you want to look at it differently?
It's a big part of that is that Asian Americans are more, a lot of them are more recent immigrants here. They have a culture of hard work and, strong culture of education importance and all of that. And so they've done well for themselves.
Yeah,
correct. How do they do that if they're disadvantaged by the system?
Power isn't just in wealth. Power is in social political influence.
Well, that's, I mean, agree with you there. And right. As he said, the largest portion of our population are white. So there is the heaviest strength there, right?
Right. So
from
Chris,
an electorate standpoint, I mean.
Let me give you a quick olive branch, and then I want to bring up my article so that we can. It's kind of the same conversation, but we'll refocus it a little bit. So there is such a thing in any country as majority privilege, right? So in India, you are going to be privileged as an Indian person, right? So white privilege doesn't translate across borders, right? So that's why I prefer the term majority privilege. And obviously there's going to be majority privilege,
it's
and
called
I think we've actually
chest feeding.
What's that?
Called chest feeding.
I think it's a little bit more complicated than that too, though.
I'm making fun of. I prefer the term. That seems very progressive of you there, bud. To be sensitive about the way it's stated.
We also want to claim that we're like this multiracial, multi-ethnic country, and our ideals are that we break down those boundaries. Now, whether or not we live up to them is a different conversation, but our ideals is something we should strive towards. Let me ask something, like just yes and no question. Like,
yep.
Do you feel that it's problematic when you see like a billboard that says like support Black-owned businesses?
Yes.
All right. I want to like.
No.
Would you find it problematic if we said support Italian-owned businesses?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
I would say it's interesting. A lot of people would say yes to the second part and no to the first, and my argument is that when we say heritage and culture, we say, yeah, let's support Italian-owned businesses. Let's support Little Poland, Polish-owned businesses. Because of slavery, because of this dynamic of servitude, this dynamic of, you have millions of people from Africa who don't have their country of origin. You can't say like, yeah, let's support Kenyan businesses. Let's support South African businesses because we stripped that away from them. So Black in and of itself in our country has kind of like transcended beyond just a skin color. My video is getting a little foggy, but it's transcended beyond just this dynamic of skin color. It has a little bit more to it. That's why it's like, you had things that said support white-owned businesses. Well, that's pretty problematic, because you could have just said, well, let's support Italian-owned businesses or Polish-owned businesses or Irish-owned businesses. And I wouldn't see the problem with that. If you had an Irish pride parade, if you had a white pride parade, that's problematic.
So let me ask it another way, and this is going to be a bit of a stretch, but I have a point I want to get to. Do you think that it's problematic to say support U.S. businesses?
Say again? Sorry.
No, not at
Do you
all.
think it's a problem to say support U.S. businesses or Ohio businesses or local businesses or any like? And the reason I say that, and I'm not really looking for a specific answer, but just a thought experiment of saying, like, at some point we are drawing a line around what our club is, what our group is, and saying, hey, support my group. And at some point we're saying, hey, this is an okay group to say I'm part of and that I want to support, and this isn't.
Right, but some of those are racist groups and some of them are not, right? So
no, exactly. And I'm not trying to say they're all equal. I'm just saying, like, by saying support black businesses, it doesn't mean I hate white people. And by saying support Italian businesses, it doesn't mean I hate anyone that's not Italian. It just means I want to support, the people that I. But I'm not saying it's okay either.
Based on immutable characteristics. Race is an immutable characteristic that should have absolutely nothing to do with how your business does.
So is being born in Ohio versus being born in Kentucky.
Right, but I mean that's a harmless group.
That's
group
only because from a societal standpoint we've made it such.
I think it kind of comes down to is that we want to celebrate different cultures, different ethnicities, different races. We don't want to mute it. We don't want to say like we want to say everything as equal. We don't want to treat everything as if it's just all. We don't want to be colorblind. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but you say, Chris, but you say that, but you don't say support, wealthy people's business, like wealthy Asians. Like you have a specific type that you champion, and it's
because I don't the wealthy people don't need me to support their businesses because I already support their businesses every time I go to Walmart and Target. But you throw on a billboard the 0.01% of black-owned businesses. Like, sure, let me go make a point to go buy my next groceries from the black-owned grocery store. The one out of every other time I go. Stop and Shop doesn't need to tell me like support big business because I go to Stop and Shop. I'm going to Stop and Shop no matter what. But if once in a while you can get a good billboard up, it's like, yeah, sure. Let me go support my friend's local restaurant that is Mexican. Let me go support the let me go there instead of Taco Bell, right? Let me go. It's like basically making.
That's a small business thing. I love that. That's great. Yeah. Do your thing. But again, the race of the person. If you're considering the race of the person who owns it, you are a racist, legitimately, right? And I mean, and Chris, I mean the classical definition of racist before it was changed, okay? I'm talking about judging a person based on the immutable characteristic of their skin. I'm not talking about the Ibram X. Kendi version of racism, which means the power dynamic has to be imbalanced.
What I'm saying is that, we should be conscious of the immutable content of someone's skin, and we should celebrate differences, and we should celebrate.
Why? What you said two different things. You're conflating culture with skin color.
I'm saying
right?
both.
You're saying celebrate. Before you said celebrate their culture, which I can agree with, and now you said the immutable thing, which is their skin. There's a difference.
I think the dynamic is when I say culture, I think of like Italian, Irish. When I say black, I'm thinking of black culture because we have stripped away black people's ability to say like, I am of, with the exception of maybe like Jamaican. You see Jamaican restaurants.
I would agree with that. Actually, that's one of my biggest concessions to the left is that slavery has absolutely stripped away any cultural identity from black people.
And that's why we say black culture. So that's why I say to help clarify. That's why I say like Italian. When I say race and culture, I'm specifically pointing towards black culture alongside Irish, Italian, Polish.
Okay, but how do you know that black-owned business is not some Upper East Side or a affluent black person who doesn't participate in culture?
I see some. I'm maybe I'm a little bit not to get pigeonholed, maybe I'm a little bit different than the norm on this, but I try to be conscious when I think of Black-owned businesses. If TD Bank is owned by an African American, or their CEO is African American, and Bank of America is not, that's not really making a deciding factor. But if going to the small town Mexican restaurant as opposed to Chipotle, I'm sure I'm going to go try to support that. Or if it's like, I'm really just try to support the local businesses that if the decision is between a big chain, being grocery, auto, something like that, food, and local auto, food, grocery. If I have the opportunity and I know the information at hand, I've done my research, I try to support the small business, especially. I'm like, if they're owned by African American, someone who's Black, Hispanic, I think that's awesome, because that money is not only going to the local community, it's also going to a demographic that the reality is has been pushed down and held back by policies in our country.
So, I mean, are you doing it because you are trying to wrong rights, or are you doing it because you want to put your money where you think it can best help somebody, right? Like, and the reason I say that is because you're lumping it together. You're saying like, hey, if I can support small businesses over big businesses, great, I'll do that, because you know what, my dollar is going to mean a lot more to that small business.
Which
I know that I can help them.
Yeah,
I know that I can make an impact in their life. Great. Same thing with, minority-owned businesses. Generally they're going to be smaller businesses, not always, right? But that's the idea, right? You were even said it doesn't matter if it was a publicly owned company that just happened to have an African American CEO versus a white CEO, then you don't care. So that's not supporting. That's not a cultural thing at that point. That's just, hey, I want to support businesses that I know that I can make a positive impact on these businesses with my support.
I think you can kind of sum it up like I guess I lean more towards like, let's support local businesses. I'm not going to support whether it's I'm going to put my money in local businesses. At the end of the day, I think you do vote with your dollar in a sense, and so I think when you put money, depending on where you're spending it, for example, I won't go to somewhere like here's the thing. If I go through all my spending habits, we're gonna find contradictions, and we're gonna get away from points. Like, for example,
wait, you bought something on Amazon?
Yeah,
I do
purchase
from Amazon. I do
Dirty
purchase from
capitalist.
Amazon. I do things I won't do is like I won't go to Abercrombie, or I won't go to. I try to thrift.
That thing's still around? I thought they went out of business.
This is oh my gosh, I did that with my shirt and the whole thing. This is a thrifted shirt. It's like a polo shirt I bought for like $10. Or Brooks Brothers I bought for like $10. I try to thrift clothes because it's better for the environment. I try to, you can't measure people on if every single financial decision they make is 100% moral and righteous. But I just try to lean more on that side. Like, let me thrift. Let me spend money at local businesses. Let me especially support minority-owned businesses, because the reality is they're up against a bit more. Because I do believe in systemic racism. I believe people are held back in certain dynamics because of that. And so, do I get it right all the time? No. Jeff Bezos has definitely made a couple $100 off of me. But I also, Chipotle and Taco Bell have sure lost a couple $100 from me because I put it into local businesses instead.
So all right. So let's pivot then, and this is going to be a different way to discuss this topic, and then maybe we can move on from it. I don't know if you saw this article, but San Francisco School Board not sure gay dad adds enough diversity to all female parent group. Right. And this is an actual thing that happened, and I'm just going to summarize this article for you. Right.
My mind.
And this kind of shit actually starts kind of pissing me off. So I'll try to tone myself down a little bit here, but. Basically what happened was that there was a gay dad who was super qualified to be on this board. Like, he was all together. He had his entire life together. He was a very accomplished individual, and he wanted to be on this board, on the school board, right?
Why is the school board all female?
What's that?
Why is this the parent group or school board or whatever he wants to be on all female?
Because social justice, right?
Well, because that's the weird thing about that is that the problem with like school boards and PTAs, parent teacher associations, is that you end up with typically more women than men, and it actually should probably be
That's
great.
sexist.
it's not sexist. It's the fact of the matter. It's just like saying like there's more women in elementary school positions, but more men in high school positions.
But so it's okay for something to be a woman-dominated area. That's all fine. But if something's male-dominated, then it's obviously sexist and needs to be corrected. No, I'm playing. Yeah, I know
we're
you
on
don't.
the same side here. I'm saying that you should have more men on PTAs. Like you should diversify it. You should have more men that are elementary school teachers. You should have more women be high school teachers.
Okay.
You should diversify.
Listen, I have a very, very simple standard for all of these issues. Is that you should be using the people that are most qualified for the position. That's it. I don't give a shit what's between your legs or what color your skin is. I do not care about that. I care about whether you're qualified to make good decisions for the position that you're applying for.
Well, I think where those things do come in play and why there's expertise that comes from lived experience. Like having somebody who has lived through the child welfare system has an automatic level of expertise.
Okay, but that's not an immutable characteristic. That is an experience, and I can agree with you.
Having someone that has grown up experiencing racism or experiencing, having been a woman experiencing, prejudice gives you a different dynamic of understanding the world, and then therefore could be making decisions that might more effectively benefit female students. You might be able to understand like what it's like to, have been told like, no, you're not smart enough to go into STEM because you're a woman, go into English, which happens a lot to people. So, having women in these dynamics can help lift those out of it because they're seeing it in a different perspective. And when we talk about board diversity, there's a lot of policies in place, a lot of, mentality to say like, yeah, let's diversify boards because historically, when we talk about boards running organizations, they've been, pretty much all white men, or in PTAs, like all white women. And we want to change both of those categories. We want more.
Right. Wait, hold on. If those people were the most qualified for those positions, then why is there an issue? Wait, right. And what I mean by that, I'm not just saying the most qualified. I mean by being the most qualified, they're going to make the best decisions in that role and push forward the best product, the best whatever it is they're in charge of.
Because there's different attributes that different people bring to the table. And sure, maybe...
Hold on. Let me just say, you're now arguing that somebody else is more qualified. My argument is not changing. If those other people are more qualified, then put them in. But if it's just because they have different genitalia, I have a big issue with that.
So I'm saying that experience is a qualifying factor when experience comes from what it's like to live life as like a man or a woman, or as a black man or Hispanic woman or whatnot. Those are qualifying experiences. In addition, my point again, Chris, is that you can be a black man who does not have the black experience that you're talking about, right? You can grow up as an affluent black person in this country and never affect Ebonics or be poor or experience poor black men, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? That's not true. You can grow up as an affluent black man and still experience racism. I definitely am conscious. Look at President Obama. President Obama grew up with plenty of privileges, and then all of a sudden, he still gets stopped by cops when he's at Columbia. Still has to be forced to show ID. Didn't have ID. Was kicked out of his freaking dorm in Columbia. He doesn't talk about that, but that's in one of his old books. So wealth does not, and that's the point. Wealth does not eradicate racism.
Okay, but I was talking culture, not wealth. I say affluent, not wealthy on purpose. Affluent indicates culture.
I got you. But what I'm saying is like it's I'm just saying we should diversify boards. That's basically what it is. Diversify boards with qualifying experiences. Like when you build a board, you should have some white men. You should have the people with the most qualified experiences. But you should be conscious that like historically, even when you have people with the qualified experiences, the doors have been shut on people simply because of race, and we should change some of those things now.
Yes, 100%. But if you can point out that happening today, I'll rally with you.
What experiences should we make sure are on a board? Right? Like, should we make sure we have some white males and some white females and some black males and some black females just from a race culture standpoint? Or should we look at should we also look at income disparity? So we should say, hey, we should make sure we have some very extremely wealthy people on the board, some middle class people on the board. Hey, let's go get a couple homeless people, get them on the board, make sure we have those experiences on the board as well. Like, where do we draw these lines?
If you're running a homeless shelter, then probably, yeah, you should probably have someone who experienced homelessness on your board.
Okay, how about if 3 white men show up to host a podcast? Do we not do the podcast because they're white?
Well, I'm Iranian.
And I'm Sicilian.
There we go. So
I'm white.
And he's ginger, so
we're talking about
all this.
I'm Irish, German.
To your point, Nate.
British.
You actually really further my point. We're 3 people of different political perspectives. Now, if we were 3 liberals talking about a left, right, center podcast, that wouldn't make any sense, would it? If you're 3 progressives, right? But now, if you're running a homeless shelter, have a homeless person on your board. If you're running a Fortune 500 company, have a bunch of billionaires on your board. If you're running,
what if you're running a business that only sells products targeted to men, like beard conditioner? Should we make sure we have women on the board?
Right? Have only men. It makes sense. Have your board reflect the population you're serving. If you're running a PTA, have men in. It takes 2 to have a kid. You need dads and moms. Or it takes 2 people to adopt. Have some gay dads, have some lesbian moms. Diversify the board. Have different parenting experiences on PTA.
I just want you to know you're going to get canceled from the left by saying it's okay to have an all-male board.
If you're running a beard company, sure. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. But in the same way that if you're running a left, right, center podcast, you shouldn't have 3 progressives. Well,
to be fair, I want more people with more experiences on here. But again, I don't care about their freaking race. I just don't. If you have the experience that I want to interview,
I'm saying you should care about race, ethnicity, these types of things.
That's what I'm saying. The irony, the incredible irony is that the only people who care, literally, the only people who care about race anymore is the left. The right has been over it since we passed the Civil Rights Act. You know what I'm saying?
There's plenty of people that are actually still racist, and many that don't admit that they're racist, that have racial tendencies. Right, that are racist but don't admit it or think that they are. I have family members that fall into that line. They say I'm not racist, but I can tell you from experience they are. Right, they just don't know it because they don't hate the people, but consciously, but they do subconsciously.
Yeah. I mean that's a huge topic. But Chris, do you? So do you agree or disagree with the San Francisco board? And again, just as I presented it, I know you haven't read it. So as I've presented it,
I wholeheartedly disagree with it. The gay dads should be allowed on the board.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I figured a lot of times I go on the attack. I'm like, Chris, your people are doing this. And then you come back at me like, Nate, look at what Mitch McConnell's doing. It's like, so I just want to make sure. Yeah. It's ridiculousness, man. And I think honestly, I believe critical race theory points to this. It points to this. This is the outcome of it.
Well, no, these are extremist social justice warriors that have lost the point. They missed the mark. They threw the dart so hard. It went right through the board.
Through the dartboard.
It went right through the board. They're missing the whole point.
Okay, so this won't keep happening?
It will when you have these crazy liberal areas like California, Oregon, Seattle.
Do you think it's going to spread more like this or no?
Probably not. I think you have different parts and different factions of the country, right? I don't think just because Texas has their own,
that's for sure.
Just because Texas has their own power grid doesn't mean all of a sudden all the conservatives in the East Coast are let's
we were going to talk about the power grid.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it's not going to spread, different. And sure, as we move forward in society, are people going to gravitate further in the political directions? Almost definitely. But I think, there's a level of rationality that also comes from certain, it makes the news is the news because it's not happening everywhere. It happens somewhere and it's that's newsworthy because it doesn't happen.
I know. San Francisco is always fun to watch from the right.
It's like Florida.
Right, yeah.
Florida men aren't everywhere. They're just in Florida.
So Denny's thrown a few comments out. He generally agrees with your point, Nate, and his argument is, look, if somebody wants to be on the board and they're qualified, let them on. This whole topic brings me back to something that I think we should actually focus on one day, and that is not necessarily this particular person's take on it, but Jordan Peterson, I think, does a good job talking about this type of topic. And specifically, the one that I found the most interesting from him is when he looks at some of the European countries, specifically Scandinavian countries, who are much further along in the sexual equality culture.
Yeah, egalitarianism generally. Speaking.
Thank you. Yeah, egalitarianism. And the interesting points that he makes about those cultures where their disparity of male to females in specific job types is massively higher than like our culture or some other cultures that are less egalitarian, simply because male and females' interests and skill sets, from a baseline, and not to say any one male or female is one way or another, but on an average, when you take the bell curve of the society, male and female interests and skill sets do tend one way or another from a genetic standpoint, and so when you're completely egalitarian, like even in Scandinavia, where their culture is much more that way than ours, there's much fewer male nurses, and there's much fewer female engineers.
There's a reason for this, and when it comes
so anyway, I'm just throwing it out. I think we should do some research.
That would be a feminism podcast, I think. We should have a woman on for that, I think.
It would be. And if I can just make
Chris is here.
Just stop it.
Why whereas, like, yes, everything should be considered valuable in society regardless of role. There's another dynamic to it. It's that and this is where please don't let your ears bleed out. I realize this statement has been gotten hijacked by the media, but gender very much is a construct. Please don't let your ears bleed out by hearing that. But gender is a social construct. Gender has been, when we talk about innately, you can't just throw two babies in a vacuum and see what happens. But the reality is that'd be pretty illegal, especially if it's an actual vacuum and they're dismembered.
So I think this will be a great one for us to dig into.
So I feel like a psychopath now. But anyways, when we talk about it, is like when we raise a man, when we raise a woman, they're being born into a society where certain gender norms already have existed, right? And they're not just going to change overnight, right? So people grow up seeing, in the Scandinavian countries, you're going to grow up seeing, I guess, mostly men in engineering, mostly women in nursing. You're going to have a pink blankie if you're a woman. You're going to have a blue blanket if you're a dude. And these things matter, right? These things help shape the different. Here's an example. I grew up around all women. I had Barbies and I had Transformers. My parents gave me things of both, right? I grew up with my mom, and my grandma. And there's no dudes in the house, so that were really consistent. So I grew up I had a Barbie playhouse. I freaking loved it. Because I don't know, that's what my mom had.
I used to play with purses when I was like 4 years old.
Yeah, it was great. I am a straight dude. It did not change that my sexual orientation and gender are two separate things. That's very critical to be conscious of too. And so I grew up and I ended up being, I grew up and became a teacher for a little bit. And now I work in social services. Social services are predominantly dominated by women. Teaching elementary school is a predominantly woman field. So
you're saying if I let my kid play with Barbies, he's going to work in a nonprofit?
He might. Yeah, you never know. You're gonna change the expectations of masculinity. You're gonna change the expectations of what masculinity means. And so masculinity and femininity do draw people into certain careers when they're constructed by gender, and we put certain.
Chris, let me ask you this. And I don't know if we want this to be our last topic. I thought we were going to talk windmills, which I guess is kind of boring. But Chris, would you concede in any way that culture might reinforce biology, that the two of them might go back and forth?
Before we dig into this, let me throw out again that we table this particular topic.
Yes, I agree.
For a podcast, and we can just have a podcast on, is gender a construct? Right. Let's do some research. Let's dig into it. Let's reinforce our own personal beliefs, because that's how you do research. And then we'll come on here and we can go at each other on this one, because I think this is a good one.
Who is a woman engineer says, "I'm going to kill him, Morty. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to do it."
It's not as sexist as you think. I promise.
So to say something to your fiance for sure, though, and which I reiterated earlier, is just because on average something is different between genders or cultures or whatever, doesn't mean that in any particular individual case, like the absolute best engineering mind may end up being a female, even if 90% of females hate engineering, right? It has nothing to do with saying what any one individual can do or can't do. And I think that's where people take it so much to heart when
Right.
you have these
It's
discussions.
not a referendum on you either way, right? So if we're talking about men being more effeminate, it's not a referendum on what you should be.
I think it's also part of it is like I said this earlier, probably better fitting context here. And sorry, I do think we should table, but I do want to make one point.
Yeah, I know. We keep
none of us can let the other one get the last word. So
I do want to say this though. It's like it's where the goalpost is too. It's like, for women in the STEM field, the goalpost is set a little bit further than where the men are. A woman does this incredible job. Pretty much they're the only woman on a whole men's team for building an F1 car, and then all of a sudden, people are like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing," and then the car wins the race. Like, "Oh yeah, we all did this," and it's like designing shit, right? And so you're entering in existing cultures that have these. It's not a vacuum, right? I wish it was a vacuum at times, but you have cultures where undertones of toxic masculinity currently still persist.
I mean, I worked in the engineering field for a long time, and we had females in the office as well. And I can guarantee you that their goals were not set any farther along than mine for performance.
Right, but
and to be honest, and this is no exactly. But like now, from a cultural perspective of how some people may treat each other, right? Like some other male engineer, especially maybe an older male engineer, may say, "Hey, you shouldn't be here." But that's not an actual performance thing. That's just an asshole that you work with, right?
So like there's some weird stuff too that happens. Like so like my fiance,
maybe she should be on our next podcast.
I know, yeah.
Be a guest, yeah. She calls them the panel of the thirsty boys, and she has like a whole group of like
that sounds sexist.
Who, like always like are dropping off coffees and stuff on her desk and like
oh my god,
just thirsting, and then also there's other crazy stories of like women
they're simping on her.
People basically simping, but there's also stories like oh here just sit in my lap as you go over this
seriously?
Hey, no, so I'll say one thing, especially in the field of engineering. I went to an all engineering school. It was like 75% male. There was a completely different scale of like attractiveness basically inside of that group, right?
Jesus
like
Christ.
it's Kettering University was the name of the school. And it's an all engineering school, but it's in Flint, Michigan. But because it's all engineering or mostly engineering, the female population in the school is very small. So you have, like somebody that you may not have thought twice about is now the most attractive person in the school.
That's the exact same effect in the Navy, right?
Yeah.
So a civilian 6 is a Navy 8, right? Not to go full misogynist on you guys, but
this is where my social justice alarms go.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit, I'm getting cancer in real time.
Yeah,
Listen, hey, Chris,
weird,
disavows. It's okay. It's all me.
That's our in-house bigot.
Right? Yeah, you need one. You have to have one.
Yeah. No, but we'll table this, and I think I want to do some research because I have heard that for several times now. I keep hearing like the point of like, do you think like social norms just reinforce biological like preferences? And I don't know the answer to that and I don't think anyone really does because again, you can't just throw two babies in a vacuum and see what happens.
There are studies, and we can definitely talk about them.
Well,
like you said, you should do some research.
I definitely want to talk about it. I think this would be a great conversation. And
Absolutely.
if we want to have a fourth person, we'll have to talk to Matt and see if he can throw together a new panel. But it'd be amazing to have.
Just get like two more white men.
Maybe she can just sit on. Maybe she can just sit on your lap while we do it, so that we don't have to get a new camera.
My god!
Yeah, she said she's never sitting on a lap.
But good for her. Stick it to the man.
2 to 3.
I'm glad she took that with humor. I was nervous.
Let's get a bunch of men talk about feminism. I think that'll help solve it.
Yeah, that's what we should do.
It. We'll find the answer of feminism.
That's right. We will.
We'll get some.
All right, so
we got got like 9 minutes. You think we can bust through wind turbines? Because we might all be.
Oh God, no! Not the wind turbines, guys. Not the freaking wind turbines.
The thing is, we're not gonna disagree, really. Most likely.
Look, yeah, go ahead, pull it up. We'll talk real quick.
Oh, Chris, it's relevant. This is not. We're not going back to the other week. This is the Texas wind turbines. You know what I'm talking about?
This is his background. You see the background?
Yeah, you see my background. That's an icy turbine.
Yeah. Anyway, pull it up. Let's go.
As far as pulling it up, I have no pull up.
Oh.
No, so let's just talk about it real quick. We got like 9 minutes left. I guess we can just BS about it for a couple minutes. So here's what I saw. All right. So I saw all day long Tucker Carlson, all the Republicans, everybody pouncing on the windmills that seem to, have failed during the cold spring. What's it called? The cold snap in Texas, right? And so I was looking into it, and I was, sort of well armed because we just did a climate change podcast. Turns out it's mostly bullshit. So here's the problem, right? So here's what conservatives are doing, and here's what I'm seeing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but conservatives were trying to say that windmills failed uniquely somehow, which is almost not true. And it turns out even if it is true, it doesn't matter. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I'll try to be as high level as I can, Chris. I'm so sorry. Okay, so here's the deal. Okay. So Texas lost a whole bunch of power when the snow, it's the white stuff that comes from the sky, Chris, when the snow came out of the sky and it was very cold.
No.
Yes. And the wind turbines stopped working, but so also did their primary generator of power, which was natural gas. And the culprit behind all of this was, ding, 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 the fact that Texas is always hot as fuck and they don't have winterized equipment for anything. Right, so the windmills froze at approximately the same rate as the pipes froze, and
actually,
so
yeah, I'd say that's fair.
I think it's pretty much accurate. We all agree on this. I think I think it's also kind of still like everybody. For one thing, I was a little surprised when the news stuff comes up. Like, why the frick is Texas on their own power grid? Like, that just doesn't seem to make sense. But also, I'm not an engineer. I don't know anything about power grids. I don't know why that wouldn't make sense. And so I'm not going to go hop on Twitter and start making points about power grids.
I appreciate it.
So
Texas did it. I think Texas is the only state that's like almost completely privatized their
Texas is
their power grid. I'm trying to think of how to say it.
We have our own.
Well, everything's run from a private. I haven't read into this in massive detail, but I believe that Texas, as a state, has just a few organizations that are privately owned that run almost all of the electric and power to the state. And so it's kind of along the lines of the whole free market, right. Private business run thing.
Jokes on them, because from what I do understand is that because of that, the value of electricity is also regulated free market style. So because everybody wants electricity right now, it's going up to like $900. But
it's like $9,000 a kilowatt or something like that.
People are gonna see their electricity bill and just cry.
So this is something that I thought was shocking, especially from Texas. 23% of their power generation is renewable,
which is mostly wind,
right?
Yeah.
That's pretty
pretty good.
Yeah, it says wind and other non-hydroelectric. I mean, I guess that just means solar. But
all right, so Chris, let me.
And this is, by the way, this is monthly. We were talking about this earlier, Nate. That's monthly.
Right. So Chris, let me make one point on that free market thing. Remember, no matter what happens, you pay for the thing you get, right? So here in Connecticut, we don't see that huge spike, but it's going to be in taxes, right? So whatever a thing that needs to get paid for example, a crisis like this, that comes out of somebody's purse. Right now, it's just coming directly from the consumer in one spike.
No,
that
would be taxes.
That isn't necessarily true, right? Unless the cost to generate,
where does that?
No, hold on. Unless the cost to generate the power has gone up that much, which it hasn't, right?
How not? It's a simple supply-demand equation.
Yeah, supply-demand makes value, what you're willing to pay for it, go up, not the cost to make it. It's the same cost to make it.
Okay, so
It's
but
just
but
you
it-
want
it's
it, so you'll pay
available
more,
if
so
you
I can
need it.
charge more.
Okay, so what would you rather have? The grid completely off the line because it's too expensive to generate, or you can pay that 9,000 if you absolutely need it?
I think the answer is that, by
No, I'm saying that you're not going to pay the money in taxes for it because yours is not privatized and they can't gouge you and spike the price like that.
look, even if it was, let's just say that companies price gouges the taxes, at least this way, poor people aren't like murdered by this, because the reality is like when we're talking about life, when we're talking about ethics, when we're talking about like, and that's where it comes down to. It's a necessity. It's ethical. When you have people that are living in poverty, like not just paycheck to paycheck, I mean like they're about to lose their home poverty, or about to like, or barely making ends meet poverty. They don't have their Xbox and they're barely making ends meet. That $9,000 electricity charge is going to destroy them. Whereas, here in Connecticut, if we had a serious crisis like that, it's subsidized by the state. So yeah, like, certain people are going to pay more. The wealthy individuals are going to be subsidizing the poor, but at least no one dies, right? And that's like
We have nuclear.
what?
We're also smart, and we have 50% of our power coming from nuclear.
Yeah, and I think also worth it. I don't know enough about power grids, the way that they function in terms of supply and demand, but I can't imagine that. It's just that there needs to be more electricity right now, not necessarily. It's harder to make that electricity. It just becomes a supply and demand of who's going to be getting it first type scenario. Whereas,
it's not that it's harder to make. It's not that it's more expensive. In the article that I was reading, it's the guy that is in charge of all I forget the name of the group that runs it all, was talking about it. It's due to a couple different factors. Some of it is that usually in Texas, the highest energy draws in the summer, not the winter, because it's hot and they run air conditioning. In the winter, it's not that cold, so they don't run a lot of electric heat. So in the winter, some power plants are actually off for maintenance and things, and that's part of what's going on. Another part of it is that they're having supply issues with natural gas and coal going to these plants because
they failed to prep the proper amount of natural gas that they were going to expect, and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't have the stuff available, and then some of it is that these facilities are having issues from the weather. Some of like the wind turbines are freezing, and some of the plants can't cope with these low temperatures. They don't have the right equipment to do that. All of that combined, they're not producing enough electricity. But the price, the cost to produce hasn't changed. It's just that there's less available, right? So if they are charging $9,000 for whatever used to maybe cost $100 or whatever, that is just pure price gouging. It's purely saying, hey, you want it, we've got some, but not enough, so we can charge more.
I think that's where the government dynamic comes in for me. But otherwise, I think it boils down to, this isn't about the Green New Deal. This isn't about Texas being capitalist necessarily. It's really just, Texas isn't usually a cold state, and they got really cold this past week.
Yeah, so look, gentlemen, okay? So the issue is that there are blackouts. They cannot power the entire state, right? So there's no redistribution scheme that works here. People literally won't have power. There is enough, if you have all that money, if you're a super wealthy person who doesn't care, there is enough for a very select amount of people to have it, right? And I understand that you're uncomfortable with it going just to the rich people. That's fine. But there's not enough for those poor people already anyways.
There's enough for everybody if everybody cuts back. They're also doing, it is from what I was reading. And also that guy was talking about, a lot of these blackouts are rolling blackouts, similar to what they do in California to try and counteract this. So that, your house is without power for a while, but then you get power for a while so that you can turn your heat on and keep your house to a reasonable temperature, and then move on to the next group, and they roll it, right? They cycle
Let me make one more point. This, and then I'll let you guys close out, and then we'll sign off for the night. Yeah, I know. Yeah, everybody's making fun of them. So sort of along those lines. So a lot of people were making fun of the fact that Texas makes fun of California for their rolling brownouts every summer. But let me just make this point crystal clear. Texas got hit with a 1 in a century event.
Yeah.
And their power grid went down. California has rolling brownouts every summer because it's, wait for it, hot, like it is every year. And they can't handle it. Right? So
I agree. No one should be making fun of Texas. People are actually dying. It's pretty messed up.
Well, okay. All right. That too. Yeah. Don't be dicks, everybody. Stop it.
All right, the memes are funny with the power grid. It's like, wait a minute. In all honesty,
yeah, they are, honestly. Yeah.
Why did Texas why do they have their own power grid? Like Texas just blows my mind. They're like Florida, like the Florida man of the states.
Oh, stop.
But with that said, I don't want people dying. I don't care if they're conservative or Democrat. I'm not checking to see where the state voted before I start feeling sympathetic.
Good man. But fuck California.
Oh yeah, Bert.
What?
All right, everybody. I love the conversation. Denny, thanks for everything. We love the audience engagement. We're gonna have a meeting this weekend. We're gonna talk about a couple things regarding the podcast. We might move to a platform, a different platform. We'll see how it goes, and we'll let everybody know how it works. So, to that end, if you want to keep updated with the show, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Parler is back up, but I have not refreshed our page, so I'm not sure if we can do that yet.
We will not have a Parler.
Yeah, I heard the app isn't back yet. They don't have an app. It's just
I do it on the website anyway. So, all right, everybody. Good night. Thanks for joining us.
Good night. See you.
I'm gonna exit my video.